because we have a presentation today, we will go ahead and do some introductions in the chat. So if you want to tell us, I think most of us have been on calls before, but maybe not all at the same time. So if you want to just tell us your name and where you're coming from and maybe what you do or something like that in the chat, that would be great. And then I'll throw it out there if there are any announcements that anybody has before we start the presentation.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I'm going to try and put a file into the thing here, which is just a GIF for a talk I'm giving a week from today. I'm going to put in a link for our newsletter that just went out on Friday morning, which has lots and lots of stuff, including some stuff that should get into the clean review cycle. Some new chapters from the teacher-friendly guide have been ported over to our Earth at Home site. And I'm done. And I'll pass it off to others.
Carolyn, go ahead.
I'm going to post an email to the listserv later, but Clio is a project partner for, I've just been saying Eclipse as from the acronym. It's through, if y'all are familiar with Dr. Kelly Lee over at UC Irvine and the work she's been doing on climate education, they're putting out a high school survey about what kids are interested in and how they feel about climate change and what they want to learn. And we're just asking, anyone who really interacts with high schoolers to spread the word. So I did put the link in the chat here, and later I will post an email on the server.
Great, thanks, Carolyn.
You got to fill us in on the kitten. Give us the story.
Oh, I foster kittens for a local rescue, and my previous set of babies were all adopted. So I got new fosters this weekend, and holding them is sometimes the only way to stop the squeaking. So I've got 3 babies.
I love it. Carolyn often has kittens on the clean column. I love it. Any other announcements? I will quickly say, I said this last week as well, but I think it's worth repeating that we did actually, I was speaking about the clean review cycle before we really started the call, and we had our review camp for that in June, but it takes us all summer to kind of catalog things and actually get them in the collection. So I just made everything live. So we have 57 new resources in the clean collection, which is awesome. And always fun to be able to say that every year. So awesome. Well, nice to see you all. If anybody has any other announcements, you can put them in the chat or quickly jump in now. Otherwise, I'm going to pass it over to Cutler, who's going to be telling us about his website, Visualizing Energy, today.
Great. Thanks, Katie. And thanks for joining. Nice to connect with this amazing community. So just a bit about myself. I'm a professor in the Department of Earth and Environment, which is in the College of Arts and Sciences. And I'm an associate director of the Institute for Global Sustainability, which is a university-wide institute that tries to pull together faculty and students and staff from across the university's 17 schools and colleges to do research and outreach and education related to sustainability. And the project you're about to see has been sponsored. The launch of it has been sponsored by the Institute for Global Sustainability. So I think the best way to talk about it, since it is a visualization site, is to actually show it and look at it. So I'll do a little bit of that, but just a tiny bit of background. I know that all of you are aware that we're in the early stages of a seismic energy transition. And part of my scholarship has been on looking at previous energy transitions and their impacts. And we know from that research that these transitions coincide with major shifts in human well-being, as well as shifts in the health of the Earth's natural systems. And now individuals and governments and corporations, educators, from the local to global scale are calling for a carbon neutral energy system, which will be the mother of all energy transitions in some important aspects. But there is deep disagreement, uncertainty, bias, and ignorance about our choices and their consequences on people and the environment. This is true not only for technical issues, but also for important questions related to equity, such as who bears the costs and benefits and who participates in the decision-making process. So as a data scientist and statistician, I observe that we are awash in data, but very deficient in a shared understanding about the interconnections between energy, society, and the environment. So that was a principal motivation for visualizing energy. The landing page, which is shown here. So this is a new project of the Institute for Global Sustainability that will help address the challenges that we face and hopefully also support the efforts of networks such as CLEAN and instructors actually in the classroom at a variety of levels to help students understand this problem. So visualizing energy is an open access interdisciplinary science communication project that aims to increase actionable knowledge about a sustainable and just energy transition. It's kind of the elevator pitch that I give when people ask me for a 1 or 2 sentence description. And so we use visualizations coupled with accessible data stories to communicate in clear and jargon-free language, even though sometimes the subjects are quite technical. And the project's initial focus, as you can see here, is on several interconnected areas. One is the connection between energy and human well-being, the history of energy transitions, and equity issues surrounding energy transitions, such as energy justice, energy burden, energy poverty, and energy insecurity. And the scrolling down a little bit here to some of the attributes of the project. We are an open and transparent project in terms of access to data and visualizations. All content is open access under a Creative Commons attribution license, so it's free to use. And as you'll see, all of our visualizations are one click away from a download, including some of the dynamic visualizations as GIFs and metadata surrounding how we generated the content that people see, as well as sources for the original data. So just talking a little bit about the actual team. So the co-project leader is Dr. Heather Clifford. Heather is an environmental engineer and a PhD in paleoclimatology turned data scientist. So she's interested in applying her data science skills to issues related to sustainability. So a lot of the technical issues regarding the site and data and the visualizations, Heather oversees. We use a lot of simple data, Excel spreadsheets. And with more complicated data, we use Python to collect and organize and clean data. We use Flourish, which is an application package for visualizing, doing the visualizations that you'll see, which is very simple to use, although it is kind of particular about how it ingests data. Most of the work, the actual visualization that you see have been done by students here at Boston University. Some of which are shown here. These are students in ranging from data science in the College of Arts and Sciences to environmental science to the College of Communication, who's doing our social media outlets, business and finance from the business school, and so on. And some of our alumni listed here are almost all of them. No, actually, all of them are all former BU students who have worked on this project and have helped generate the content that you see. So if we go back to the homepage here, and maybe I'll just go through a couple of examples of content in some of these initial areas. I should say that we launched in January of 2023, so we're very much in the early stages of content build out. So we picked a couple of core areas to focus on. So I'll choose a couple of samples of content from these different areas, which also demonstrate some of the types of visualizations that we use and how the data are used to generate them. So this is a visualization. Well, the title of this is the US energy history in 2 charts. And so what you're seeing here is, on the vertical axis, is the quantity of energy used. Notice we're back to the colonial period. It's a data set one of my former students developed. And you're looking at the quantity of energy consumed in the United States by different types. And there's lots of stories within stories here. The initial rise of coal, followed by its replacement with oil and gas, and then more recently rise in nuclear. And one of the stories that I tell when I talk to students about this is, when you're talking about decarbonizing the economy, well, that's 80% of the energy in the country still comes from carbon. And wind and solar doesn't even show up because it's the thick of the line would overstate its contribution to overall energy use. So we have a big challenge. You can also, in this case, switch us to ranks. So it simply ranks the energy sources in terms of their importance. And so amongst other things, if you look at coal, you can see its dominance at the turn of the 20th century, the Industrial Revolution, and the steam engine. And then if you turn to something like oil, it replaces coal in the second half of the 20th century. So lots of information can be gleaned from this type of interaction. Here's the same data in a static format showing along the vertical axis the share of total energy use that comes from different sources. This is in the United States. And so,
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I think Roberta might have put this similar comment in the chat, but or question in the chat. So Roberta, if you have a different question, let us know. But yeah, I was a little bit curious, like it says food and fodder. I assume fodder is feed for animals.
Correct.
And food, is that like agriculture? Does that include production of food, like industrial sort of like mass, like the processed food as well? Or is it mostly agriculture, like growing?
So fodder is correct. It's food for draft animals. So prior to the steam engine, most of the work, all of the work done in the economy, most of it was done by people and animals. So it's important when you go back to the 18th century that you're accounting for the energy devices, the machines that were doing the work and the fuels they were consuming, which is fodder. And the food there is food actually eaten by people. So it's a food consumed by people in the United States.
Oh, just food consumption, the energy, like, gotcha.
The calories of food consumed. And the calories of food eaten by animals, mostly horses in the United States, which were super important. But when the first car rolled off the assembly line in 1910, there were still 25% of the agricultural land in the United States was growing food for horses. So it was a major part of the economy to produce the food for people and draft animals. And so here you see the predominance of wood initially. America had prodigious forests, which it heavily relied upon. Then you had this big substitution of coal, which is this dark blue line, such that by World War I, coal had supplanted wood. And then you had a second big transition when oil and natural gas replaced coal. And so these are some of the major transitions in the past. And we study these to understand what their impacts were on the economy, well-being, and so on. Up here is nuclear, 3%. And then up here is wind and solar combined are 1.2% of total energy use. They're bigger fractions of electricity generation, but small fractions overall. While we're on history, another connected part of this history are changes in the types of machines we use to do work in the economy, the devices that use energy and produce useful services for people, one of which is generating electricity. And so going back to 1900, this is a database which looks at, on the vertical axis, what percent of all the electric generating capacity was in the form of these various devices. Water turbines, which are in hydro plants, steam turbines, which are in oil, gas, coal, and nuclear power plants, internal combustion engines, gas turbines, which are now new modern natural gas plants, wind, solar, and so on. And so you can see in the early part of the 20th century, it's all about rivers. Then it switches very quickly over to steam turbines and the use of fossil fuels, then gas turbines. This is largely due to the advent of fracking and the large availability of cheap natural gas beginning in the early 2000s. And then more recently, you can see big additions in the case of solar and wind. So solar and wind are growing fast, but they're still small overall. And another way to show this is through a bar chart race, which are simply going to keep track of the cumulative additions to generating capacity in the United States, where capacity is measured in megawatts. And one of the earliest lessons is water was super important in launching electricity in the United States, particularly out west. Then post-World War II, along came the steam turbine and coal and oil and gas combustion. Then you'll see the gas turbine, which will become really important, particularly as cheap natural gas becomes available beginning in the early 2000s. That's fracking. And then at the very end, you see big jumps in solar and wind who have made, recent big contributions. So that's a little bit about history, some of the history examples. We also cover renewable energy, and I'll show you one example of renewables, which will illustrate another type of visualization that we use. This is related to bioenergy power. So this is electricity generated by burning plant material of some way, shape, and form, including animal waste, and using it to generate electricity. And this is a global database. So there are, represented by circles, all 687 biopower plants in 2022 in the world that are generating. And the size of the circle is scaled by the actual capacity. So the biggest biopower plant is a wood-burning plant in Sweden. And when you get to some of these smaller plants, a lot of these are small agricultural waste power plants in China and Brazil, which I'll come to in a moment. You can then take those power plants and look at what types of fuels that they use. And the dark blue in the middle are agricultural wastes. Orange is biodiesel. The green are paper mill waste, so byproducts of processing timber and lumber and producing pulp for paper. Refuse in the light purple, which is a waste to energy, burning municipal solid waste. And so you get a sense of the distributions there. And then you can look at how those are sorted by region. And so you see some very interesting things, such as in South America, overwhelmingly, most of the power plants burn agricultural waste, and most of these are in Brazil. And what's happening in Brazil is they harvest sugarcane to produce ethanol. They have a very big ethanol program. They dry the plant byproduct of that. It's called the gas. They dry it, and then they burn it in a power plant right next to the ethanol refinery to produce electricity. And so you can see a lot of, there's just hundreds of these small plants in Brazil and also China. If you look at Europe, you'll see that there's a lot of wood power plants, especially in Northern Europe, where the trees are abundant. And then these purple circles are all waste to energy facilities. So in Europe, where land is scarce, it's not a lot of room for landfills and so on, they burn their trash, essentially. And you can see that that's also the case in North America down here. There's a lot of waste to energy facilities, mostly in the US.
Somebody asked, what is the biggest purple dot in
Oh.
North America?
And
What is that one?
so it's a wood burning power plant in Canada. So they harvest wood. Most of these new wood burning plants are pellets. So they'll harvest timber, they'll crush them and grind them and add some adhesive and coagulant and create pellets and feed them into power plants, just like you can buy for your home. They make pellets because it produces more uniform combustion and a constant heating value, which is better for the plants.
Interesting. And then somebody else asked about, was that on a previous one? I don't see anything about Finland here. Roberta, was that on the last graph or is that?
I think on the first graph he showed, the one that was all the same color, the text talks about the biggest
Oh.
power plant in the world is in Finland. But when I clicked on that big circle down there, it's in Sweden. I was just curious why the discrepancy.
Two different.
Oh, it's maybe two different years. But the thing is source underneath the graph says it's 2023.
Right, it's a 2023 release. That's a good largest operating biopower plant. So, okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, I need to perhaps note this. So these are plants that have a status of operating, announced, or pre-construction. So this plant down here is in pre-construction.
Gotcha.
As the largest operating plant, wherever that might be. So this is announced and so on,
Right.
would be that Sweden plant. It's good
Or the Finland one.
catch. And I
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
you can see that here, where in the last slide, where you sort these by status, operating, announced, pre-construction, and construction. So here's the biggest. There's that plant in Finland.
There it is, yeah.
And here's the one in pre-construction. Okay, we also, I'm kind of just jumping around here at random. Well, not random, there's actually some hopefully method to my madness. We also talk about the consumption side of the equation. We were talking about sources there. And here's one recent example where we talk about fuel efficiency. Well, we talk about cars in America, which is one of my favorite topics because it is so easy to talk about and is a source of a lot of the challenges that we face in decarbonizing. So this is an article about how the weight of vehicles affects fuel efficiency, where fuel efficiency is measured by miles per gallon on the vertical axis, and the horizontal axis is the weight of the vehicle. And so these are data, all 2023 year vehicles as evaluated by the Environmental Protection Agency. And they include gasoline, internal combustion engine vehicles, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So those plug-ins also still use some gasoline, which does not include electric vehicles. So what you generally see, the colors are, the blue are cars, and the oranges are trucks, and the green are both, which is not even sure what that actually means. I guess it's some kind of crossover vehicle. Yeah. But anyways, in general, you see this trend as you get heavier, your fuel efficiency goes down. It's pretty simple physics. So that's important to know as a consumer if you're concerned at all about issues related to cars. But there are, of course, also differences within a given weight. The economy can vary dramatically. So here is a Ferrari weighs 4,200 pounds. It is 800 horsepower. And then all the way up here is a Ford Escape. It's a plug-in hydro-electric vehicle, also weighs 4,200 pounds, only has 163 horsepower, and it gets 3 times the efficiency per gallon. So lots of interesting ways to explore this information and connect it to people's driving habits. You can select a vehicle there and it will show up. Katie, your Bugatti is down here, 1,500 horsepower, goes from 0 to 60 in like 1 second, and gets really bad fuel economy. Anyways, and then this article turns to trends in weight. And so these are new car sales in the United States going back to 1975, and the vertical axis is weight. And you can see that generally across all classes of vehicles, the weight has gone up. Although it's leveled off for truck and car SUVs, but this speaks to the challenge of raising the fuel efficiency of vehicles when people want bigger, larger cars. I mean, that's a lifestyle and cultural aspect. And car makers have been ingenious at packing more horsepower and performance into lighter cars and giving people some of the performance they want while still enabling fuel efficiency to ramp up. Be a lot greater if the cars weren't as heavy, but it's a complicated story. Okay, one last article, and then maybe we can chat, or if people want to explore some more. We have a lot of content in the area of energy justice, which is based on the principle that every person deserves access to safe, affordable, clean energy. And we have content connected in several different areas. One of which I'll show you is, let's see, here's one. We're doing some work trying to catalog the participation of women in different energy industries. And this is some work done on women employed in the global wind industry. And so this is done by surveys of global energy companies. And this shows the percent of employment in different parts of companies in the wind energy field. And not surprisingly, as you rise up the food chain, the participation of women declines. And you also see a difference between STEM and non-STEM fields, where at least in the United States, you've historically had biases against women advancing in STEM fields for reasons that many of you probably know better than I do. There's some differences by region. And here's some polling data which looks at men and women's perspective of the status of women. So if you look at the chart on the left, it shows the percentage of people who believe, in blue, men and women are paid equally. And so you can see that men are 30% more likely to say that men and women are paid equally compared to women. And also that women are more likely to believe that men are paid more. There's very few people who believe that pay is equitable. So clearly there are issues in renewable, in this case, the global wind energy industry, regarding gender parity in terms of opportunities and wages. And they survey women in the industry who are asked, well, what would help reduce these gaps? And some of the familiar points of emphasis are things like appropriate networking and mentoring and training and so on. So that's one of the issues related to energy justice that we're talking about. I think I'll stop there and maybe have a discussion, or people want to look at some other areas of content. I would love to hear some feedback about how this could be used in the classroom and what types of resources or content we could develop to do that. Before I do that, sorry, after offering to do that, I wanted to talk about access to content. Someone just show this. This is an article on the history of oil and gas drilling in the United States. So since 1859, we drilled close to 5 million wells, which is 3.4 wells every hour for 163 years. That's a lot of holes in the ground. Anyway, so here's a chart that shows the number of wells drilled. The blue is oil, the yellow is gas. Here, this big surge here in gas is the fracking era that began. And anyways, so below every chart, you can click on PNG and you can download a PNG of the chart. Oops. Get my screen. You can click on the metadata. No, it's kind of small, but it gives you all the information about where the data came from, the calculations we made with links to the original source. You can click on this data link, and it downloads a CSV file with the data that are in the chart. And you can also, on this the small code, you can see if I click this, I have now copied the HTML, so that if you just paste this into the code for your website, this visualization shows up exactly as it does here. So this is part of our effort to make it easy for people to use and access the content. So now I'll really stop and ask for questions or comments.
I'd love to ask a quick question while it's still in my head. When you were talking about putting that on websites, like if we wanted to take a particular chart and embed it in our website, is there information on your site about attribution, what we need to put there as far as the attribution?
There is information at our website on how that should happen, but at the bottom of, when you take this visualization, this PNG, you'll notice that our tag goes with it, and also the attribution back to Boston University. So it goes with the visualization when you capture the static image or embed the dynamic version.
Great. I'll let other people ask questions before I ask my other ones.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you know how folks are using it now. I'm very interested in getting more climate change across the curriculum, and energy history has such great potential in social studies classes, but I don't think it's being done very much. But this would be really helpful for.
No, it's not. And the energy that is done is a lot of, and not belittling this in any way, it's very focused on energy engineering and sources. Like, here's a power plant, here's, here are oil resources, here's electricity, here's magnetism, the kind of basic physics and engineering, which is super important, but there's this whole other realm that is needs to be out there. And so we have had really strong feedback from educators in higher education. So much so that in the last 2 months, we are starting to pivot our fundraising efforts to being a general resource to really focusing on higher education. Because we now know, when as an example, now that the semester started, we look at our website analytics and we see these visualizations being embedded in Blackboard and Canva. So we know that people are using them, and we just have had a lot of feedback from people. We have a long list. Believe me, we keep track of them because we've got to, as we try to go to funders for help, we keep track of the sort of feedback and accolades when they come. And so we've clearly hit a sweet spot with educators in higher education. Now we just have to improve the product where need be and get the word out more. I'd be happy to talk to you how you might want to do that, Don, in your class.
Yeah, it's not. I do teacher professional development, not teaching a class of my own at the moment, but teaching teachers all the time.
Yeah. Am I picking on people? Or
No,
you?
go. I can help, but I think
Caroline.
Carolyn. Yeah, Carolyn was next.
So this isn't necessarily about using the resources, but more some of the information. I read a book last year that posited, you can see, the huge drop off in coal being supplanted with oil, which, I mean, lesser of two evils, I guess, on this one. But one of their sort of ideas they were putting forward is that part of the reason for the switch away from coal was to undermine the labor movement, because coal towns are historically very close knit. And I'm sure if you know anything about energy history, which it sounds like you're very well versed in, you know that like labor militancy and developing unions has been really, really key in some of those coal towns versus places like oil fields and rigs where you've got folks that are basically they're like 6-month shifts away from their family. The level of community building and solidarity just is not there. I don't know if I haven't really been able to find anything to sort of corroborate that idea, but I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I think that it's not a huge factor in what's happening in the US, although I think locally in some areas it's super important. It was a big deal in the UK. So Margaret Thatcher in the early 1980s broke the back of the coal union in a protracted standoff. And that really accelerated the demise of coal in the United Kingdom. I think that's been less so in the United States, because even though in local communities and states like West Virginia, coal mining jobs are really important, but for the economy as a whole, it's pretty small. And so they don't have the same kind of bite at a national scale that it does in other places. But locally, those are really interesting, fascinating stories. In the US, it's really about cost and climate. Wind and solar, new wind and solar and combined cycle gas are way cheaper than coal, way cheaper than coal. And people see the handwriting, even though the US as a whole is not moving particularly quickly towards reaching any climate target, people see the long run handwriting on the wall for coal. And so no one's building coal plants in the US ever again.
Is the increased cost inherent to coal, or does it have anything to do with like labor protections for, not that they have much these days, but labor protections for?
A good question. I think so. The cost of producing a kilowatt hour of electricity from a power plant is the cost of building and operating the plant, as well as the cost of the fuel that goes into it. And I don't think that the cost of coal, it's important, but not a huge part of the cost of building and operating a coal-fired power plant.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that, but I don't remember the exact statistic, but the number of man hours to produce, I think it was like 38 tons of coal in Wyoming is 1.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, it's the mechanization is coal shifted from the east.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, to the west, where it's all surface mine. You had a high degree of mechanization that reduced a lot of labor input. So and that also to underground mines. It's interesting that kind of an aside here, but how these stories can be tied into so many other issues for students. So the United Auto Workers strike right now. So you have, these are 3 plants that are union shops in the northern Midwest. And one of their concerns is the fact that most of the electric vehicles being built in the country are in the South in non-union shops who get paid less in terms of wages and benefits. And so the UAW is trying to push the company to raise the wages and benefits for those non-union shops because, including Tesla, because they are concerned that they're going to not be able to keep up with the non-union shops. So the electric vehicle, and also electric vehicles take way less labor to build because there's so far fewer parts. You're just not going to need as many people to produce electric vehicles. I see
So there was a few questions.
Some access problems, which I never actually.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. Yeah, in the chat, it looks. I don't know if they're related or not, but somebody had issues, and I know universities sometimes block things, but I felt like your site. I was saying it seems like it's a .org and it's sponsored by another university. I can't imagine why that might be. But then someone else said they were getting a few possible or some error messages, and if maybe a browser was better than others. So I don't know if these are similar or different issues, but yeah, just some questions.
I really appreciate that feedback. I'm going to send this to our technical people right away because that's concerning. Phishing website.
Yes, please do bring it to their attention because what you have is so informative and I would love to share it with my students, but my work is not allowing me to open it at all. And I'm at Florida Atlantic University.
At all on Safari or Firefox won't even like go to the website, but Google Chrome was like going to the website and some visualizations opened and some didn't.
And you're on a like Wendy, you're not on any sort of
I'm
you're
not
on your
on
own like private internet connection.
So
right?
Okay, so Rachel, where are you? What kind of firewall are you behind?
Great question, but I'm connected with Florida Atlantic University in West Palm Beach and Boca Raton. I mean, I could talk to my IT person about it, but I wanted to get some feedback maybe from you first before I go to them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So right now, where are you? What firewall are you behind? You at a university or school?
Right, I'm with FAU, Florida Atlantic University.
All right. Well, I'm taking down all of this, and my next stop after this call will be to talk to our IT folks. I think, as Roberta said, this looks like a security certificate thing, which we've never ever had a problem with. So I'm just wondering if it's something that like happened like just before, this morning or something.
Because I've been accessing the site just fine myself. So,
but this is several people on one call is not acceptable.
Well, and I will say that like we recently had our IT guy in the office here updating the system, and so some other things have been popping up too, so that could be our issue, but like you said, there's other people having issues, so
yeah, no,
I don't know, we all need to check maybe.
Yep, I will definitely do that. I appreciate the feedback.
And then I think there was another question too that came up about the sort of accessibility of the visualizations, and if you've considered like screen readers and their ability, are they able to tell people what's going on in these visualizations and like the colors in these? Have you considered accessibility in these visualizations? Is sort of
the color issues we have I think dealt with, and we've had someone in the computer science department who specializes in that stuff who has worked with us. The reader is not it's not a hard thing to do because it's ubiquitous, but it is a non-zero expense. And so in terms of getting someone to do it correctly. So as soon as we get a little bit more money, now that we're off the ground, that's one of the, that and any other accessibility that we haven't addressed is first on our list to do.
Quick question. So going on, Mike's same question, the .org. So it is a Boston university, is that right?
It is, yes. So we are it's a .org. It will probably become a 501c3 entity, but we can't do that all at once. So we have stayed It is on its own web server, and it's a .org site, just to be consistent with how we want to share the information. But everything you see here has been paid for by Boston University.
Okay.
Well, that's not totally true. We have some small donations from various alumni, but it's a BU operation.
Okay, because I'm writing an email to our IT person and I just want to get it right. Thanks.
Yeah, the site is hosted by GoDaddy, so it's a pretty standard, pretty standard service. I guess question, as someone, who are potential customers, maybe not for this particular content, but who think a lot about content delivered on the web. I mean, are there any observations about how it could be, improved to, make it more attractive for faculty to use, or what, I'm sure some of you have a lot of experience thinking about this stuff. We all do.
One thing that I sort of stuttered on for a minute when I looked at it this morning was the animated graphs showing cumulative production, which I looked at it and I thought Pennsylvania is not the biggest producer of coal, but I guess in the history of the US it is. But I thought it would be nice to have that animation along with the changing ranking from year to year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we struggle with that. So that's not amenable. And I think in the coal production graph, there is a chart above it which looks at annual totals.
Yeah, the graph is there, but
in a bar chart ratio, if you do annual production, there's way too much. It becomes crazy, and it doesn't work visually. At least not for me. It gives me a headache because there's flipping back and forth, whereas the cumulative totals are much more gradual to change. But it's a good.
Maybe it could be done by decade instead of by year.
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that Pennsylvania is still the largest cumulative producer of coal, even though it wasn't the last year that it was the largest producer was like 1949 or something like that. So yeah. Man, they mined a lot of coal before 1949.
A lot of holes in Pennsylvania.
Yes, indeed.
You see them when you drive along the interstate and back roads, man, all those coal piles sitting along the, they have a terrible legacy of abandoned mines and acid mine drainage.
I'll mention something just more on the website design or accessing the visualizations, that the front page is cool because it goes through has a lot the featured things and the latest, and then it has the areas of focus. But what I actually really appreciated was the explore data stories tab, and how you had a whole bunch of different topics that you could search by in the data visualizations. And I really liked that because, especially for an educator, if you're looking for something in particular to be on a certain topic. So the areas of focus here on the front page, there's 4 listed, but you have a whole bunch more in that explore data stories under topics. Yeah. So I wonder if I didn't find this at first, but it's so cool that you have so many different topics you can search by. So I don't know if there's some way to kind of put that on the main page along with those areas of focus, where it's oh, we have more topics beyond just these 4 as well. Because when I was first searching the site, I went into those areas of focus, and then I kind of came back out to this explore page and was oh, there's so many more topics I could search by. So I don't know if there's this is very prominent obviously at the top, but yeah, like I said, I kind of went into those areas of focus down there first. And I don't know if there's some way of putting a fifth circle that leads you to the explore page and says other topics or something like that. I just wish I had found, or not wish, but it would have been nice to find that explore page a little bit sooner for my own
welcome interest. To the discussion Heather and I have every day, which is
Oh,
how
I
you
know.
build-
We talk about
yeah.
website design
So the
a lot.
challenge with that is when do you have enough content to justify calling out an area as an area of focus? So we have bits of content in, you go to some of these other areas. So if you go to like policy, I think we have there's like 4 articles so far. So does that really justify being on the homepage in
Well, and
like,
that's why I was saying, I don't know that you need to put all of the topics on the homepage, but if you had another circle that sort of said other areas of
okay,
focus
all right,
and
that's
then
reasonable.
led you to the explore page. So there's kind of 2 ways from the main page to get into that explore.
Right.
That might help. I don't know. Again, this is my own personal experience with the page. I don't know if other people would do the same
Alright.
thing as me, but
It's good
I
feedback.
was looking similar, and I also think there is some type of active update happening because I was in it on Google Chrome and now I can't use anything. And I just updated Google Chrome to see if that would help. So anyway, but same as Katie, I was like, ooh, cool. How do I search for certain things? And I didn't click on that. I kept looking for like a search bar or something else.
So you didn't click on explore data stories.
Well, I did at one point, and that's something that's blocked. Now everything's blocked. So now I can't get to the site at all on any browser. It's some kind of update that clearly, like I said, I was in on Google Chrome, and then Google Chrome was saying it needed to update. So something just updated. But I can't get on any browser. But yeah, this is what I was looking for because I was immediately like, oh, is there a visualization for this? Just this week, I made one. I work more at high school level, but I ended up making my own, like, where is electricity coming from in the US because I couldn't find what I wanted. So I'm just like, there's probably a ton of stuff you have that I've looked for.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. So let's Caroline and Roberta have their hands up and are waiting very patiently. Caroline, why don't you go first?
Okay, I just wanted to say I can drop the link in the chat. I don't know if you're familiar with Climate Central.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I was just gonna say I don't know if y'all would be able to like work with them at all, contributing data, but I love their infographics. They've got really like nice punchy visuals. So
Yes,
saying I don't know if that's something where y'all could.
they are a good model. We've
They're
looked at them a lot. And we've actually talked to some people there early in our project. And I think their visualizations are excellent. So they have some good best practices that we could definitely learn from. Now they're oriented to the media almost exclusively. And so it's a different, a site that's oriented towards higher education is going to look different than a site oriented towards media. But I do agree with you that it's a very tight integration of text and quality of graphics and so on. Their charts are not interactive, right? So they're all PNGs. So I think we've chosen an application where it allows that interaction. And one of the things that we've talked about, and I'd actually be interested to hear what you guys think about infographics and the use of, you love infographics.
So we will post that kind of stuff on our social media, but also I do a lot of I do teacher professional development trainings. I do general community outreach. We call it our Climate Speakers Network training, and both like the pictures and infographics and such from a place like Climate Central. We're not media, but I can tell you that, like, if I'm trying to get my presentation approved by my boss, if it's not, if it's not like colorful and eye-catching and all that, they'll basically tell me to like take it out, reduce the text. The good thing, and I do also teach at a community college, so the thing with a community college or just any school is basically you've got a captive audience and they have to listen to you. And when you're working with folks who are just like, yeah, this is a free webinar series and it's educational, but there's no real consequence for them to just space out when, I mean, trust me, like I went through the climate reality training, and like PowerPoints of my love language. And I personally find a graph showing the decline of sea ice way more compelling than any one individual anecdote that somebody can tell me. But most people are not like that. So I love your data. I just know that like if I try to integrate it into my programs, I would basically be told like find a way to summarize this and make it pretty, or else nobody's gonna pay attention. Which I totally get is a different audience than what you generally are aiming for.
Yeah, but I use those animations as well. I do this. The ozone hole is another example. The animation in NOAA on the ozone hole, like you can talk about it, but just show the thing and you see the hole in the ozone layer. And so we're not, we're data-driven visualizations right now. That's where we are. In developing that type of content is, down the road for us. And even infographics, we're closer to infographics because infographics typically integrate data with other stuff. And so we're actually thinking about doing that. We need to hire additional staff who can, I'm an art, you don't want to trust me to make visual design decisions. So you would need someone with that kind of expertise.
Same. That's why I rely on the other websites.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't, by the way, I didn't mean that to be like, I didn't mean that to be like a criticism or anything.
No. It was great, excellent feedback.
Okay.
I just wanted to acknowledge that we are past time, so we better still ask your question, and anybody that can stay,
And
great. But I just wanted to say thanks to anybody who does have to run. Yeah,
absolutely. I just wanted to mention I did a search on the site just now. Since I work for air quality, I did a search on air pollution. I got search results with at the very bottom, that little previous, next, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that kind of thing. But when I click next, it doesn't tell me, like I can't tell if I'm on number 2, number 3, number 6, number 7. None of that is being highlighted. So it's hard for me to tell whether these are valid results for my search or whether I'm looking at everything on your site, because it just keeps going. So you might try to figure out if you can get it to at least highlight where you are on the search so you can keep track of which
That's
page.
Really good feedback. Thank you. I didn't realize that that is not a good navigation experience.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Well, I'm going to run, but I wanted to say thank you so much for this. Our Office of Energy Policy didn't know about it either, and they're all over it now. They really think it's interesting, and I personally think I'll be using this with students as we talk about how our energy choices affect the air that we breathe, and there's a lot of good visualizations there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cutler, for being here. Thanks everyone for joining. And yeah, and I think, Cutler, I'm pretty sure you sent this around on the Clean Network email list as well. And so hopefully if y'all have any questions, you can contact Cutler through his email as well.
Absolutely.
So
can I just, so Wendy, you just posted something interesting in the chat about high school students. And so I wonder if we could connect about that, because the folks that need, you must be familiar with NEED, National Energy Education. They've reached out to me, want to talk about use in high schools. And so I would love to hear about, maybe if you could shoot me an email, it's cutler@bu.edu, and maybe we could connect and chat. I'd love to get your feedback on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate all the feedback. Awesome. I'm going to go check on that energy certificate right now.
And generally speaking, if y'all need each other's emails at all, like I have that as well. So reach out.
Thanks, Katie. Take
Thanks,
care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.